The purpose of the human experience. Have you thought about that or wondered?
The purpose of the human experience. I've always centered it on growth, and I really believe that growth is part of a life-giving journey, so that when we are growing, we are developing as humans. We can live within our primitive automatic mindset, or we can aspire to something that brings us into being something more than what we were before. I think that's, for me, it's a nice way of thinking about that.
Emotional well-being, or being mentally healthy and balanced. How do you describe that? Is that a destination to get, or it's something that we are always working on?
I always thought of it as an art and a science to our well-being, and I've never thought of it as a linear process that you achieve a final destination of wellness and that your challenges at that point are dissolved. I look at it really as a journey of well-being, and in life we encounter challenges, and they will bring out certain qualities in us that may start to change the way that we approach life, and sometimes put walls and limits around what's possible for us because of the things that have happened to us. So I think our well-being, I often, in a lot of the work I do, is really, who were we before all the traumas and all the experiences that we encountered, and to find that place of that core self of who we actually are, let's say, without carrying all the burdens of past traumas and struggles. And so a place of really coming to that core sense of who you actually are without trauma, without fear. And, those are very peaceful states we can get to. I think it takes practice to stay there.
What are some of the misconceptions we have about healing, Paola?
I have a sense that a lot of people are striving to get to the place where they imagine healing as being this ever-present state of serenity and calmness and being in control, and that when that happens, we're healed. I don't know that I see healing that way. Healing for me is a way where we can establish a softer physical and emotional state within ourselves. It's not inherently never experiencing adversity. It's your relationship to the adversity, and that you develop a more compassionate relationship to the experiences that you're witnessing inside of you. It's not about eliminating feelings, because our fabric of human experience is to have all experiences, and is to have fear and joy and pleasure. So healing for me is changing the relationship we have with ourselves and with the fabric of all the parts of self that includes who we are. We are not unidimensional. And when we embrace that, it creates a softening internally, and I think a greater open-heartedness, even compassion towards others.
I love that wisdom. Yes, it goes back to what I call self-love, unconditional self-love. Unconditional acceptance, for me, has been the door to what I call freedom on my own terms.
And it's recognizing our own humanity and having some compassion for that. We're not perfect human beings. We're flawed, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yes, it's okay to be imperfect, right?
Yes.
And we see that in nature, actually. Everything is so imperfect and perfect at the same time. For some reason, we forget that. And we search for perfection, for destinations, for a place to stay, as you said earlier.
Yes. And I actually think it contributes to further discontent. And as much as I appreciate a lot of the positive orientation that we even see online, and I completely support and endorse it, I also understand, though, that the people who have not dealt with their own grief or fear or sadness, and they just pursue positivity in an effort to exile parts of themselves, unfortunately, it can keep them stuck. And so I think having a place where people can learn how to embrace and relate to their emotional landscape, I think can create a much more whole sense of wholeness inside rather than a fractured sense.
What drives us to find out, to explore that inner landscape and do the self-discovery, the healing work? Is that something that takes deeper suffering, or it can happen in a different way?
I do think it may involve that suffering. I feel I was blessed at a very young age. I had a mother who very much created a space to deal with emotions that was very healing, and that was a blessing that I had. But I do actually think that when we have put certain experiences and we've closeted them, or we've made efforts to distance ourselves from them, that in our effort to work on healing them, it does mean actually to face the emotions that we want to escape and run from. If we don't acknowledge the parts in us that are still suffering, those parts will continue to have an influence in the decisions we make in our lives. It may be outside of our awareness. And that's why I think that initial task of heightening your self-awareness is very important.
And that's so true that we try to escape them, but it's only by addressing them, embracing them, understanding those feelings that we can free ourselves from them. It's challenging.
It is challenging. This is one of the things that would be nice is if we took away the negative judgments we have about certain emotions and states of ourselves. This part of me is weak. This part of me is, I need to hide it away, or it's going to take over. And I think there's lots of fears. There's reasons, and perhaps sometimes even adaptive reasons, that we want to get away from emotions if we've been flooded by them, if we don't know how to deal with the intensity of those feelings. And perhaps it has taken you down a path that didn't feel safe. And I do think sometimes we need support in navigating emotions that we have perhaps exiled, and need support in creating a context that you can sit with those emotions instead of having judgment on them, to be curious about them. And often one of the things I will do when people stay with those and connect with those states is it often traces back to an early experience. And sometimes we forget that it traces back to an early experience. And it's much easier, I find, to do that healing when we go back to that experience.
My last question is, what are 3 things about life you wish everyone to experience before they lose the body?
Self-compassion, acceptance, and embracing all that there is, and without judgment.
Yes, 1 trillion times. If I could say more, I would. Yes. Thank you so much, Paola.